Aya! At the same time, in a distant place, where heaven's original body was sealed, there was a massive shudder as heaven let out a miserable scream. Lava erupted out of the earth and drowned out the entire dimension. Heaven's aura plunged as he was dealt an indelible and enormous wound. Over the eons, the celestial palace had granted heaven an inextinguishable, powerful, and unique strength. This was a strength that no grotto heaven realm expert could match. Even the end of the world would not be able to injure heaven. This enormous ritual tool had long ago become one with heaven's life. But this was precisely why heaven's original body and soul had suffered the greatest wound he had suffered in his life. Rumble. At the same time, high above the capital, the celestial palace was constantly shuddering, its aura in utter disarray. Large amounts of debris rained down from the sky, and the energy that had previously been gathered gushed out as it went out of control. Essence Supreme, Grand Supreme, and Radiance Supreme could sense that the supreme and ultimate ritual tool of the Celestial God Organization had become like a dimming star, ready to fall at any moment. No! Impossible! Looks of disbelief appeared on their faces. Not even the collapse of the world would leave them more shocked than this. They had already known that Wang Chong's group had entered the Celestial Palace. Though they were surprised, they had not panicked. No one had even brought up entering the Celestial Palace to help Heaven deal with Wang Chong's group. Heaven was undefeatable, particularly inside the Celestial Palace. This was an absolute belief and trust they had held about Heaven for countless epochs. But now, Heaven had been defeated. Heaven's personal ritual tool had been utterly destroyed, and so had their understanding of the world. Essence Supreme had followed Heaven for countless years, and he had never imagined that someone would truly be able to do this. Come, let's get out of here. As the enormous celestial palace began to collapse, extreme panic appeared in Essence Supreme's eyes. Heaven's avatar had been annihilated and had completely disappeared, and that Pantheon Pearl had also been caught up and been obliterated. Essence Supreme had been able to clearly sense all of this. They no longer had any foothold in the capital. If they didn't leave now, once that child of destruction came out, they would all be dead. Delish! Essence Supreme was the first to flee into the void. Behind him, Grand Supreme and Radiance Supreme fled like stray dogs with their tails between their legs. In just a few seconds, they had completely vanished. Not long after they had gone, a ripple appeared in the air, and then several more people appeared outside the Celestial Palace. None other than Wang Chong's group. Rest here. You've already done your part. As Wang Chong spoke, he sent a large amount of stellar energy into Li Xuantu's body. Li Xuantu was in an extremely battered state. He had grown much thinner and seemed like nothing but bones. Besides that, his breathing was extremely weak and his aura was much fainter. The gap between him and Heaven was just too great. To stop Heaven and buy time for Wang Chong, this former crown prince had even burned up his lifespan, and his condition was disastrous. Wang Chong's stellar energy greatly improved Li Xuantu's condition, but he was still weak and unable to battle. What about you? Things aren't finished yet. I still have some things to do. If this celestial palace isn't taken care of properly and it's allowed to crash into the ground, it will cause even more damage. In addition, I've discovered a few things in the celestial palace, and if I'm lucky, I can reverse everything that Heaven has done and bring back everyone in the capital. What? Everyone's eyes brightened at this news, and even Master Guangxing turned to look. Heaven's plan was not completely finished. He only managed to gather the souls and energy of the 3 million people in the capital in the Celestial Palace, but he did not complete the final step of sacrificing them. This is where our hopes lie. I believe that if I can take control of the Celestial Palace and reverse its power, the souls and energy should return to their bodies. Wang Chong explained. Wonderful! Little Nightmare rejoiced at Wang Chong's words. Li Xuantu patted Wang Chong on the shoulder and solemnly said, If that's true, then I leave everything to you. Please. Since Wang Chong had brought it up, he naturally had some confidence, and no one would disturb him now. Li Xuantu quickly drifted down from the sky toward the imperial palace. Bang! Not long after he had gone, A golden light emerged from Wang Chong's head, and 3 identical Wang Chongs emerged from the golden light. I have to succeed no matter what. Wang Chong had summoned the 3 divine embryo clones from the Halo Divine tool. Together with his original body, they were positioned in the eastern, southern, western, and northern parts of the Celestial Palace. With a massive boom, for arms touched the floor of the Celestial Palace, and an enormous energy flowed into the ritual tool. The ritual tool that had been in the middle of collapsing immediately stabilized. With a thought from Wang Chong, those 4 streams of energy gathered into a miniature celestial palace that merged into the real one, replacing part of its framework and stabilizing it. With the help of the myriad forms world, Wang Chong was familiar with every part of the celestial palace's structure. He could construct a reverse celestial palace, so he naturally had a way to take control of it. Boom! With a great boom, the celestial palace became still, everything frozen in place. And then an invisible law energy flowed through the celestial palace and made it start working once more. But this time, the energy of the celestial palace was flowing in the opposite direction. Time slowly passed. At first, there was no change in the celestial palace, but within it, the booming grew louder and louder. Soon, with a deafening roar, the celestial palace began to revolve, and the connection between the ground and the celestial palace was restored. Light erupted from the celestial palace and gushed out. Countless souls traveled along invisible lines toward the surface. Buzz! In a certain dark alley, a silk-robed and fat merchant lay face down on the ground. But a moment later, a golden light descended into his body. There was no response at first, and then there was a soft groan as the merchant's body trembled. He took in a deep breath, like it was his first, and then opened his eyes. At the same time, in a nearby tea house, the green-robed owner of the tea house opened his eyes. In the streets, hostels, taverns, government offices, the imperial palace, golden light descended, and more people awoke. Their eyes were no longer slack, but sharp and clear. What in the world happened? They looked around in blank confusion, having no memory at all of what had occurred. Phew! In the sky, Wang Chong spread out his psychic energy over the capital, and upon seeing this, he sighed in relief. Wang Chong immediately poured even more stellar energy into the celestial palace. The booming from the celestial palace grew louder and louder, and more golden light deluged the ground. This was a rain of life. More and more groans rose from the capital as its denizens opened their eyes and stood back up. The 3 million souls that the celestial palace had absorbed were returned. Master Guangxing's eyes were bright, and his heart rejoiced. Wang Chong's efforts had minimized the losses from this disaster. Good. Master Guangxing truly considered this a blessing. If heaven had not been in such a rush to deal with them and had instead waited to offer up all these souls to the celestial palace, it truly would have been too late. This small difference in time had allowed Wang Chong to reverse the celestial palace's damage. As time passed, Wang Chong took complete control of the celestial palace, and even after 1 hour, there was still a large number of souls raining back onto the ground. At this time, about 90% of the people in the capital had awoken. Only 200,000 some souls were still left in the celestial palace, and Wang Chong was doing his utmost to return every soul. During the process, the celestial palace was still collapsing. Though Wang Chong was doing his best, 70% had already collapsed, debris raining down from the sky. Even the most ordinary piece of debris would still do severe damage to the capital. However, besides a few houses being destroyed, few areas in the capital were damaged, and no one was crushed to death. From a distance, one could see debris raining down from the celestial palace, but after descending several hundred feet, it would disappear as if it had never existed. This was the work of Wang Chong and his 3 divine embryos. While controlling the celestial palace, they were also using the power of spacetime to open up spacetime passages that would send the debris into the depths of space, thus minimizing the damage. The celestial palace was still operating, the golden rain of life continuing to fall. Some time later, as the last souls left the celestial palace, transforming into golden light and descending to the ground, Wang Chong let out a sigh of relief. We finally succeeded. 2 hours had passed since the celestial palace had begun collapsing. Wang Chong and his 3 divine embryos had been operating at essentially full capacity throughout, and they had expended an enormous amount of energy. At this time, Wang Chong was ghastly pale and his aura was weak. His back was drenched in sweat, but he was satisfied and pleased. Regardless of anything else, this crisis had been resolved. Only the last step left, Wang Chong muttered. Rather than letting his guard down, he became even more serious than before. In the depths of the celestial palace was a special region where some people were imprisoned. These people were extremely precious to Wang Chong, and they were why Wang Chong had persisted until now and did not dare to be careless. Bang! Wang Chong took in a deep breath and activated his great yin-yang heaven creation art. There was a great rumble as 4 yin-yang symbols appeared around the celestial palace, and Wang Chong and his 3 divine embryos began to exert a powerful pull. With a howl, the surrounding worldly energy and the universal energy from the surrounding dimensions flowed into Wang Chong and his 3 divine embryos. This energy rapidly replenished Wang Chong's reserves, and his power swelled. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong gathered up this energy and sent it into the celestial palace with his own remaining energy. After a moment of silence, the massive and crumbling celestial palace shuddered once more. Crack! A sharp sound came from the depths of the celestial palace, as if something had shattered. Success! Wang Chong and the 3 divine embryos immediately fell back. As Wang Chong and countless people on the ground looked up, a massive fissure appeared at the bottom of the celestial palace. As the fissure opened, several figures that had been imprisoned within dropped out. Master, Village Chief, Senior Su, Lord Xianxia. Those figures dropping out of the celestial palace were none other than the hostages heaven had taken during the battle in the capital that had taken place right before the 3rd lunar eclipse. Whoosh! Wang Chong waved his hand, causing a large halo of space-time to appear beneath the dropping figures and teleport them to Wang Chong's side. Chong-er, king of foreign lands. Surrounded by stellar energy, the hostages quickly awoke. Though they had been imprisoned for so long and were weak, they had not suffered any serious wounds, and they were able to quickly come around. After a moment of surprise, they quickly understood what had happened. You saved us, Master Village Chief Senior Su. It's fine as long as you're awake. Wang Chong was delighted to see his seniors. After that battle where Wang Chong's divine embryos had been defeated, the demonic Emperor Old Man and the others had disappeared. Wang Chong had attempted to find where they were imprisoned, but he had not expected it to be in the Celestial Emperor Palace. Now that he had successfully saved them, the operation was truly complete. Master Guangxing watched all this from the side and subtly nodded. He could sense that these people were important friends to Wang Chong. Rumble! A metallic clatter drew everyone's attention. In the sky, the Celestial Palace, having lost all its power, completely collapsed. It was now nothing more than a pile of debris that plummeted to the ground. Ah! Cries of alarm came from the ground. It was clear that the populace of the capital had seen what was happening. Master, the rest of you, please rest. Wang Chong glanced up at the Celestial Palace. Heaven had wasted eons of effort on the Celestial Palace, and even though it had completely crumbled, its empty shell was still enormously heavy and needed to be taken care of. Chong-er, I leave this place to you. Village Chief, General Su. Let's go. The demonic Emperor Old Man was very straightforward. He knew that they were in no state to help out, so he quickly led the group back down to the ground. As they left, the Celestial Palace fell apart into 2 halves, plummeting to the ground with countless pieces of debris. Wang Chong and the 3 divine embryos shot forward. Arriving beneath the Celestial Palace, they joined together to create a massive space-time tunnel through which the Celestial Palace and all of the debris fell. Though the Celestial Palace had been destroyed, this edifice would always present a problem. Wang Chong didn't have the thought of wasting tens of thousands of years building another Celestial Palace, but there was no telling who else might be harboring such ambitions and think about trying to do something with the remnants of the Celestial Palace. Thus, Wang Chong threw the remains through a space-time passage and into the depths of space. Given its inertia, Wang Chong was confident that the Celestial Palace's remnants would travel far away from this world, and no one would ever be able to find it. Whoosh! For hours later, Wang Chong sighed in relief and finally walked out of the space-time passage. Everything was done, and he was sure that the Celestial Palace would never again appear in the Central Plains. Boom! As Wang Chong appeared, heaven-shaking cheers erupted from the ground. King of foreign lands! King of foreign lands! King of foreign lands! Countless people had been quietly looking up at the air for more than 2 hours now. Many people had already recollected that forgotten battle, along with everything else. Upon hearing the cheers, Wang Chong smiled, a stream of warmth in his heart. Buzz! Suddenly, there was a strange ripple from the center of his forehead, and he felt familiar voices calling out to him. Wang Chong's expression focused, and a moment later he disappeared. When he next appeared, he was inside the Halo Divine Tool. Wang Chong immediately saw that familiar estate. It was no longer cold and still, but lit up by lanterns, the chattering of people coming from inside. Wang Chong rushed into the estate. Young master! Young master! In the rear courtyard of the Wang family residence, the servants were whispering to each other. Upon seeing Wang Chong, all of them bowed. Wang Chong rushed past them without a glance and into the study. At this moment, Wang Chong was exceptionally excited and impatient. Creak! Opening the door, Wang Chong flew inside. The room was packed with familiar figures. His big brother, second brother, little sister, and also the trusted maids of the estate. In the very center was a figure that Wang Chong had missed the most. Everyone was surprised when Wang Chong came in, and then they shouted out in unison, "Chong-er! Third brother! Little brother!" As he heard these familiar voices and felt these warm and familiar gazes, Wang Chong smiled. "Mother! Big brother!" Wang Chong quickly walked over. The curtain was finally drawn on the Celestial Palace incident, and everything returned to the proper course. That period of time when they had been under heaven's sway had been a nightmare to the populace of the capital. Meanwhile, Wang Chong had finally been restored to his original position. Without the influence of the Celestial Palace, everyone once more recalled their memories of Wang Chong. With his family awakened, Wang Chong returned the Wang family residence to its original location. As for his subordinates, Old Eagle, Xianxia, Xue Chenjun, they also returned to his side. Several months later, it seemed like the Celestial Palace incident had been an illusion, and everyone cast it to the back of their minds. The capital became bustling once more, pedestrians and trade caravans going in and out of the gates in hundreds of thousands. Everyone will rush to any place in the world for the sake of profit. On the balcony of Taibai Pavilion, close to the King of Foreign Lands' residence, Wang Chong, wearing a black robe with a golden dragon embroidered upon it, sat in front of the railing and looked over the capital. His face was indifferent and handsome, his every movement exuding a unique charm that enchanted others. From Wang Chong's seat, he could see the thronging crowds of the capital flowing back and forth through the streets. 100 years ago, Emperor Taizong had beheld the same scene and uttered the same words, but their moods had been entirely different. This bustling scene was an ordinary day in the capital. Wang Chong had seen it countless times in the past, but at this moment, Wang Chong felt incomparable satisfaction and peace. The country was at peace. Was this ordinary scene not exactly what he had sought? "You're very bold to dare to utter His Majesty Taizong's poem out in public. Are you not afraid of criticism from the imperial censors?" A teasing voice said from the side. "Let them be. When the time comes, I'll say that the one who said it was the former crown prince, now the virtuous king." Wang Chong immediately retorted. At these words, the two exchanged a glance and laughed. After the Celestial Palace incident, Li Xuantu had seemingly realized that he truly didn't have many relatives in this world. No matter how much he hated Li Tai, and even if Li Tai wasn't actually a member of the House of Li but a transmigrator from another world, the blood of the House of Li had still flowed through his body. That sense of isolation and despair he had felt in the Celestial Palace had greatly changed him. After that day, he had gone into the imperial palace, found Li Heng, and had a long chat that lasted late into the night with him. Li Heng had been extremely moved, accepting his uncle and granting him the title of virtuous king. But Wang Chong knew that this virtuous king had nothing to do with the word virtue. So long as he wanted, he could even pull Li Heng down and make himself emperor. In private, Wang Chong had already teased Li Xuantu for this title several times. After that incident, Wang Chong and Li Xuantu had become much closer. There was nothing in court to bother them, and they were both kings, so they had met to have some tea and snacks. Right? Are you eating your breakfast or not? Li Xuantu suddenly extended 2 fingers and lightly rapped on the table before pointing at the breakfast on Wang Chong's table. There were several plates piled high with food, but he had only taken 1 bite and not touched it again. Take it. Wang Chong didn't care that much. With a wave of his hand, he pushed over the breakfast foods and smiled. Wang Chong was the owner of Taibai Pavilion, and the chefs were also his. Wang Chong had taught these chefs about all the foods from his first life, including these snacks. But to his surprise, while he was an infrequent visitor to his own establishment, Li Xuantu was a frequent customer. Rice noodle rolls, preserved egg porridge with pork, soup dumplings, roast pork buns, prawn dumplings, shumai sponge cake. This new virtuous king of the Great Tang had completely let go of his inhibitions. Whenever he came to this place, he would order all these things and then slowly enjoy them. A voice came from behind them. Your Highness, it's getting late. Shouldn't we head into the palace now? His Majesty is waiting. Upon hearing this, Li Xuantu put down a prawn dumpling and frowned. All right, don't make trouble for them. Wang Chong grinned and glanced at Li Jingzhong. Wang Chong had originally had a poor impression of Li Jingzhong because of his original life course and the things he had done in the history that he had come from. But Li Xuantu seemed to hate Li Jingzhong for no particular reason. Whenever Li Jingzhong appeared, he would never have a very good look on his face. Li Jingzhong had been here for some time. While the 2 of them had been eating breakfast, he had been silently waiting in the back, his waist bowed. Let's go. Wang Chong didn't want to make things particularly difficult for him. With a wave of his sleeve, he went downstairs with Li Jingzhong. Their carriage passed through the streets and quickly entered the imperial palace. In Taiji Palace, Wang Chong met with Li Heng. Li Heng had grown much thinner, and that dragon robe woven specifically for him now seemed slightly too large. You're here. Li Heng had been reviewing memorials on his throne, but upon seeing Wang Chong come in, he put down his brush and paper and walked over to welcome him, a smile on his face. This lowly subject pays respects to His Majesty. Wang Chong tidied his robe and bowed. Ha. There's no need for you to be so courteous before us. Li Heng smiled and helped Wang Chong up. In the Celestial Palace incident, Wang Chong had saved the lives of the 3 million residents of the capital. If not for Wang Chong, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Together with the matter of the cold wave, Wang Chong had already saved the world twice. Wang Chong's contributions to the world had already transcended the imperial court. Li Heng had already announced to the court that Wang Chong did not need to follow the rules of the palace or display the necessary etiquette, and not even the most conservative officials had objected. Right, we forgot, you are no longer the king of foreign lands, but the Great Tang's supreme king. Are those things ready? Bring them in. Li Heng heartily laughed. Yes, your Majesty. A palace attendant respectfully walked in, bowed at the waist and holding up a golden tray. The tray had only a few objects. A white dragon robe with golden embroidery depicting a dragon, a document granting a title, and a dragon token that represented Wang Chong's status as the supreme king. Wang Chong couldn't help but be moved as he looked over the items on the tray. Not long after the conclusion of the Celestial Palace incident, Li Heng had ignored Wang Chong's objection and gathered the officials to discuss Wang Chong's reward. Li Heng had argued that Wang Chong had accomplished such a great feat that he needed to be rewarded. To reward merit and punish mistakes was a basic principle for a sovereign. If Li Heng did not do this, a sovereign's word would no longer be trusted. Though Wang Chong had initially objected, these words made him give up on his objections. In truth, whether it was in terms of government post or noble status, Wang Chong couldn't be rewarded anything more. But Li Heng felt that though he could not give Wang Chong any substantial rewards, and he was already at the highest rank of nobility, he could still endow Wang Chong with a unique title and special privileges. At the start, Li Heng had wanted to crown Wang Chong as the sovereign king to express his revered status, but this had caused intense objections from the officials, who believed that this could clash with the status of the sovereign. Later on, after discussing several titles, it was eventually decided to crown him the Supreme King. The Supreme was the highest, an indication that Wang Chong stood the highest of all the kings. There was originally no distinction of rank between kings. This was the first time in the history of the Great Tang that a special title was granted superior to all the kings of the imperial household, and this was even for someone who did not belong to the imperial household. Besides this, Li Heng had also ordered the Bureau of Rights and Chamberlain of Dependencies to create a special robe and token for Wang Chong. That white and golden-threaded dragon robe was unique in the Great Tang. Even Li Xuantu's treatment could not compare in some aspects. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Ha ha ha. There is no need to be polite before us." Li Heng patted Wang Chong on the shoulder, not holding himself like an emperor at all. "This is a joyous day that should be celebrated. At the very least, the Bureau of Rights should hold a ceremony. Alas, you insisted on something simple. If Su Qichin were here, she would definitely—" Li Heng seemed to realize something and immediately shut his mouth. Alas, he was just a little too slow. All fell silent. Upon hearing Li Heng's words, Wang Chong went stiff, pain appearing in his eyes. Heaven had captured many people. The demonic emperor old man, the Wuxiang village chief, Su Zhengchen, Zhangqiu Jianxiong. But Wang Chong's fiancée, Su Qichin, had seemingly completely disappeared. When the celestial palace collapsed, Wang Chong had originally believed that Su Qichin had been imprisoned with the demonic emperor old man and the others. But even after everyone else had gotten out, there was still no sign of Su Qichin. It was like she had completely vanished. Everyone knew about this, and they knew of Su Qichin's special place in Wang Chong's mind. If heaven had not appeared, they would already be married. Thus, they had all tacitly agreed to not mention this matter in front of Wang Chong. "My apologies. We misspoke," Li Heng apologetically said. "I know." Wang Chong shook his head, his eyes dim. Wang Chong absent-mindedly left the imperial palace, not even caring which direction he went. After the celestial palace was taken care of, Wang Chong had dispatched all his subordinates and tried every method at his disposal to find Su Qichin. But all of his efforts had failed. Wang Chong knew that heaven had definitely taken away Su Qichin, perhaps even before he had entered the celestial palace. He would not be able to find her unless he found out where heaven's original body was sealed. But now that heaven's avatar was dead, everything had gone up in smoke. He didn't even know where Essence Supreme and the others had run off to, let alone where heaven's original body was. The sage emperor had already spent several decades doing the same, trying everything in his power to find out where heaven was sealed, but he had failed. The sage emperor had spent several decades in fruitless effort, so how could Wang Chong do much better? After leaving the imperial palace, Wang Chong grew more and more depressed and melancholy. It was like there was a large stone on his chest, squashing his lungs. Whoosh! Finally, after traveling several hundred feet, Wang Chong began to sprint for all his worth in a single direction. After a long, long while, when he felt like his stellar energy was beginning to flow less evenly, he stopped. Around him were mountains and lush forests. Wang Chong had no idea where he was, but there was no doubt that he was far away from the capital. At Wang Chong's level of cultivation, it was no easy task to consume all his stellar energy, and exhausting himself like an ordinary person was simply impossible. But he had managed to release some of the pain and pressure on his heart. "Qichin, no matter what, I will save you." Wang Chong looked up at the sky, clenching his fists as he mentally swore an oath. After a long while, once his heart had calmed down, Wang Chong prepared to head back to the capital. There were many things he needed to take care of. "Wang Chong, do you have time? I have something to discuss with you." A voice rang out in Wang Chong's ears. Wang Chong was taken aback by this voice, but he quickly realized that it was Master Guangxing. "Senior." He was more than 1,000 li from the capital, and Master Guangxing had lost his physical body a long time ago. Wang Chong had never imagined that he would be able to sense his location over such a long distance. Wang Chong immediately spread out his psychic energy, but he found no sign of Master Guangxing's energy signal in the surrounding several dozen li. This was simply unbelievable. Despite his confusion, Wang Chong quickly responded. "Okay." A golden halo of spacetime appeared, and Wang Chong stepped through this spacetime passage and vanished. For hours later, beneath the Western Mausoleum, Wang Chong met with Master Guangxing once more. This time, Master Guangxing seemed to have an even more solemn expression than at their first meeting. "Senior, you wanted to see me?" Wang Chong asked. "I don't have much time left." Master Guangxing's first words scared Wang Chong out of his wits. "Senior, you?" Wang Chong instantly turned nervous. "Don't misunderstand. In my current state, I'm not easy to kill even if countless epochs pass. But this sort of immortality comes with a price. In helping you enter the celestial palace, I exhausted my soul. I will probably have to enter a state of hibernation soon," Master Guangxing sternly said. Wang Chong was hesitant. He had never imagined that all of this would be due to him. He wanted to say some comforting words, but he didn't know what to say. This doesn't have that much to do with you. Even without this matter, I would have fallen into hibernation. In 1 year, I am only able to be awake for that very brief period. This is the curse heaven placed on me. When something is gained, something must be lost," Master Guangxing indifferently said, apparently having comprehended everything. "Is there nothing that can be done to change it?" Wang Chong said. Master Guangxing merely shook his head and smiled, and Wang Chong instantly fell silent. "There's not much time left. Before then, do you have the time to hear an old man's story?" "It's a story from a very long time ago," Master Guangxing said. Wang Chong was rather surprised, but he still nodded. Master Guangxing had called it a story, but Wang Chong knew that it couldn't be that simple. When someone has been sealed for too long, they start to want to talk to someone. Perhaps this is just what happens when one gets old. Master Guangxing mocked himself, but very quickly, a look of recollection appeared in his eyes, his mind drifting far, far away. "I've basically forgotten about my origins and background, as that was truly too long ago, and there wasn't anything very special about it. But there is one thing that I am sure you already know. A very long time ago, I truly was a member of the Celestial God Organization, and I followed heaven for a very long time. Although I wasn't a member of the Supremes, my status was even higher. At that time, my relations with him were not as tense as they are now. One day, heaven suddenly came to find me, saying that a crisis was coming, that in a short while, a soul from another world would arrive. He would bring disaster upon this world that would affect everyone." Wang Chong was slightly shaken by this news, and he suddenly understood something. In the Celestial Palace, Yellow Emperor Shenyuan had left 3 psychic brands. One had been for him, one had been for Little Nightmare, and the other had been for Master Guangxing. But Master Guangxing had never mentioned what was in his psychic brand. It was clear that what he was saying was linked to that set of memories. Heaven told me that he needed me to do something. Before that seed had fully developed, he wanted me to find that soul, become his teacher, and control him from the shadows. I quickly found the person that heaven spoke of. I had imagined many scenarios, but what I had not imagined was that the person heaven spoke of was only a child of 11 or 12 years old. He knew nothing at all and could use no abilities. Even his martial arts were taught by me. The matter proceeded more smoothly than I expected. That child trusted me enormously, never once suspecting me. Moreover, as I interacted with him, I found that he was truthfully just an ordinary child, little different from other people. Moreover, he had ideas that were sometimes so childish and naive that you could laugh. Master Guangxing suddenly paused, a gentle smile appearing on his face. He appeared to be immersed in those beautiful memories. Wang Chong didn't rush him, only emotionally sighed as he looked at Master Guangxing. He had already guessed at the relationship between Master Guangxing and the Yellow Emperor back in the Celestial Palace. A story that had begun with deception would not have a very good end. Heaven and Master Guangxing had both been outstanding talents of the world. To countless people, they were legendary existences. Heaven had designed a plan which Master Guangxing had executed. But Heaven had underestimated one thing: human emotion. Master Guangxing's current expression said everything. As the two interacted every day, and with Xianyuan holding nothing back from Master Guangxing had unwittingly begun to truly treat Xianyuan as his disciple, casting the initial plan to the back of his mind. And Master Guangxing's next words verified Wang Chong's theory. I was with him for 10 some years, guiding him and teaching him everything I knew. I watched him mature from a naive boy to a steady youth of some fame. With every step he took, I felt pride and joy. At some point, I forgot what my initial goal had been. Master Guangxing sighed before continuing. But there are some things that can never be changed. No matter how unwilling I was, once those otherworldly invaders crossed through space and came to this place, nothing could be changed. War erupted, the Battle of Zhualu that you are familiar with. What? Wang Chong trembled in shock, his eyes flying open. The Battle of Zhualu? Wasn't that the war between the Yellow Emperor and Qiyu? The Battle of Zhualu was an ancient war that everyone was familiar with, a struggle for power in the Central Plains, a war between humans. But Master Guangxing had just said that Qiu's side was actually the otherworldly invaders. This overturned everything he knew. Of course not. Master Guangxing shook his head, but he was not at all surprised by Wang Chong's reaction. Everything you know is just the result of our modifications of history. There are some things that ordinary people should not know. The true war was much more intense than you could imagine, on a much vaster scale than you know. Even though we controlled all the books and documents, we were still unable to completely cover up the matter. Moreover, many of the people who had taken part in this war were displeased by our efforts, and they attempted to use various special methods to record that war. Even within the Celestial God organization, there were people who secretly recorded the matter. This is why you can still read a little about the war of that time, Master Guangxing calmly said. Wang Chong's mind was thrown into disarray by Master Guangxing's words. He had never imagined the truth to be this. He had truly believed that the otherworldly invaders had not appeared in the last several thousand years. Wang Chong had never imagined that they had actually invaded more than 1,000 years ago, during the era of the Yellow Emperor. Though he felt shocked, Wang Chong knew that as an eyewitness to all of it, Master Guangxing would not deceive him on this point. Wang Chong also thought about many other things. Hanba, Bifang, Yinglong, Quinyu, Qiu's 81 brothers, with bronze heads and iron bodies, who feasted on stone. Perhaps they were a reference to the otherworldly invaders? The bronze heads and iron bodies most likely referred to their armor. And as for eating stone, the otherworldly invaders consumed the world's foundational energy. In areas they occupied, the earth would collapse. To the ancients, the otherworldly invaders must have seemed like they ate stone. All of this had been expressed in very vague detail. Still, Wang Chong was deeply shaken by this news. Wang Chong also thought of something else. Was this where the Yeluo, the Celestial God organization used to support and Lushan came from? Wang Chong said to himself. In the War of the Northeast, and Lushan had commanded 30,000 powerful Yeluo. These Yeluo had clearly been modified from the otherworldly invaders, and their bodies carried the special attributes of living otherworldly invaders. This army had given Wang Chong a great shock, as Wang Chong had previously interacted with civilizations connected to the otherworldly invaders, the Landeshunger and Kegong. These were civilizations separated by more than 10,000 years, and the bodies of otherworldly invaders could not have remained so well preserved for so long. But if they had been from the Yellow Emperor's era, everything could be understood. Master Guangxing's voice pulled Wang Chong's mind back. In that war, I accompanied him on the campaign trail, persuading one faction after another to join him. In the end, we formed a united army and defeated the otherworldly invaders. That child grew happier and happier, but I grew more and more worried. I knew that we wouldn't have much time left together. One day, just when Little Grass had been revered by all the people of the world and was made emperor, Heaven came to find me. A pained look appeared on Master Guangxing's face. Wang Chong was silent. There was no need to speak about what had happened after this. After 10-some years of interaction, Master Guangxing had long since begun to feel sentimental toward his would-be objective, treating him as his real disciple. He would have been incapable of executing Heaven's plan. I strongly argued for Heaven to give up on his plan, but Heaven was deaf to my reasoning. According to Heaven, each child of destruction from another world would carry a special object. This was the first time in countless epochs that Heaven had an opportunity to seize this object for himself, so Heaven had been extremely cautious and careful. He could not allow failure, and he naturally would not permit anyone to stop him. By then, Heaven had already become completely obsessed. I finally understood that I would not be able to change his mind. After a great deal of hesitation, I finally decided to find Little Grass and tell him everything. Alas, I was too late. Heaven knew what I would be doing, and he was waiting for me midway. Heaven destroyed my physical body and sealed my soul into the mountains as a punishment for betraying him. As for Little Grass, not long afterward, he was tricked into the celestial palace, after which there was no longer any hope of salvaging the situation. Master Guangxing painfully closed his eyes and fell silent. Wang Chong fell silent. Even though he had already been to the celestial palace and knew about all that had happened, he was still greatly moved after hearing the story from Master Guangxing's mouth. In truth, Little Grass had already realized something, right? Wang Chong suddenly said. Master Guangxing nodded. In the celestial palace, the psychic brand that Shenyuan had left had also mentioned this. Before the incident, Shenyuan had managed to develop a few theories from the clues around him. Even so, Shenyuan felt no hatred for Master Guangxing. On the contrary, he was grateful to Master Guangxing for keeping him company for countless days and nights. However, this was exactly why Master Guangxing felt so ashamed and overcome with grief. Wang Chong, thank you for listening to all this, Master Guangxing said, his expression softening. Shenyuan is the best disciple I've ever had, and the one that I cared about the most. I poured a great deal of blood and sweat into him, and there perhaps will be no one else with such outstanding talent and brilliant qualities. I will also not take any other disciple. Xuanyuan's death was the greatest pain in my life, and it is precisely why I do not wish for you to retread his unfortunate path. In the Celestial Palace, while you managed to defeat Heaven and destroy his personal ritual tool, that was far from enough to kill him. So long as he lives, you are still far away from talking about victory. Heaven has far greater abilities than you can imagine. Even if his soul is heavily injured, so long as he is given enough time, he can still come back, and the purification plan and Celestial Palace will repeat themselves. Moreover, Heaven has at least 3 Doomsday insignias under his control. Essence Supreme, Grand Supreme, and Radiant Supreme are gathering the rest. Heaven's reemergence is inevitable, Master Guangxing said. Wang Chong fell silent, his heart heavy. At that moment, Wang Chong thought about Su Qiqin. Whether it was for saving Su Qiqin or saving this world, Heaven was a barrier that had to be overcome. Only by killing him could everything be brought to an end. Wang Chong, you've never seen Heaven's original body, so you don't understand how powerful he is. With your current ability, even with Little Grass's legacy, you're still no match for Heaven. This is a power that is far beyond your ken. Only the Divine Martial Realm can deal with the Divine Martial Realm. If you cannot break through that threshold, then once Heaven truly emerges into the world, everything will come to an end, and everything you have done before this will be meaningless, Master Guangxing solemnly said. But how can I reach the Divine Martial Realm? Wang Chong finally asked. The Divine Martial Realm. This realm was far too distant. Even though Wang Chong had a cultivation that placed him far above other mortals, he still had no idea about how to reach the Divine Martial Realm. The Sage Emperor had tried to reach the Divine Martial Realm, but he had ultimately failed. Since ancient times, only Heaven had ever managed to reach the Divine Martial Realm. This is the main reason I sought you out. Reaching the Divine Martial Realm requires a long time and astonishing talent, as well as various lucky encounters. Truly, it can only be run into, not sought after. But there is one important thing to reach the divine martial realm that one cannot go without, and it is also one of the reasons no one except heaven has ever succeeded. Wang Chong straightened up as he hastily asked, "What is it?" "Dragon Qi," Master Guangxing firmly said. "Ah!" Wang Chong was struck dumb. He had never imagined that this would be the necessary item for advancing to the divine martial realm. Dragon Qi is just one name for it. You can also consider it as the acknowledgement of the heavens and earth, Master Guangxing sternly said. In the subtle realm and grotto heaven realm, one understands how to control the laws of the world. At the divine martial realm, one requires the law of the world to submit to you. You must become the master of laws, the master of the world. Only by obtaining the acknowledgement of the heavens and earth can you surpass the grotto heaven realm and observe and control an even higher level of energy. It is similar to how one deep in the mountains cannot see the entirety of the mountain. Only by escaping this situation and placing oneself high in the sky can one see everything, Master Guangxing said. Wang Chong turned pensive. Though he still didn't understand what sort of power the divine martial realm was, he was gradually beginning to understand Master Guangxing's words. What Master Guangxing was saying was really that he needed to surpass laws. Only by surpassing the laws of the world would he be able to take another step forward, to an even higher level. Since ancient times, only imperial households have possessed the Dragon Qi, and only emperors have become masters of the world, acknowledged by countless people, so they found it easiest to transcend. Heaven was the earliest sovereign of the world, and this was an important reason that he was able to reach the divine martial realm. But after heaven, it has become basically impossible to reach this level. Those astonishingly talented experts are mostly solitary loners who are used to traversing the wilds, so very few of them have had a chance to become emperor. As for emperors of the secular realms, few of them can reach the saint martial realm, let alone the divine martial realm. A sovereign has numerous affairs constantly dragging them down, and they waste so much time on government affairs that it is foreordained that they cannot reach a very high level of cultivation. Thus, for countless eons and epochs, no one except heaven has been able to reach the divine martial realm. Li Tai was the renowned sage emperor, the wise sovereign supported by the countless people of the Central Plains. His incredible talent and cultivation were enough to win the admiration and praise of countless martial artists, and there were few that could match him. He had fit both of those two important requirements, but alas, he had still failed. If even Li Tai had failed, how could anyone else succeed? Wang Chong, you are different. You and Li Tai are the most unique people I have seen in the last 1,000-some years, the people with the greatest chance of reaching the divine martial realm. And your cultivation, now that you have obtained Little Grass's legacy, I am sure that you can reach that boy Tai's level. I have never reached the divine martial realm before, and even that boy Tai failed at the last hurdle. Neither of us were able to successfully glimpse that realm, so we are not able to impart to you much information on how to advance to that realm. You will have to depend on yourself for this, Master Guangxing sternly said. Dragon Qi and transcending the laws. This was what he had wanted to tell Wang Chong. Besides these two things, there were several other important factors, but no one except someone who was attempting to reach the divine martial realm could possibly know about them. Wang Chong bowed and solemnly said, "Many thanks, Senior." At Wang Chong's level of cultivation, the quantity and density of one's energy were no longer very important. Information played a far more important role. For Wang Chong, Master Guangxing's 2 points were priceless treasures, information that he could not obtain through any other method. Master Guangxing looked at Wang Chong and nodded in praise. While he had initially somewhat rejected Wang Chong had successfully used his actions to obtain his recognition. He had seen the same rare qualities on Wang Chong that he had once seen on Little Grass. But there is one point that you must take very seriously. The process of breaking into the divine martial realm is extremely dangerous. If you succeed, you will reach the same level as heaven, and your soul will become immortal, but if you fail, you will be unable to transcend the laws, so you will receive a backlash from them. This was why Li Tai grew weaker and weaker, and in the end, he was so weak that he could only fight to a draw with heaven's avatar. This is the backlash of the world's laws. If this happens, it means that the entire world has become your enemy, and even breathing becomes a battle. This is because all the laws are rejecting you. Boom! Master Guangxing's words made Wang Chong's heart shudder. Breaking into the divine martial realm would result in either advancement or withdrawal, as failure would result in backlash. Wang Chong had already known about this. For many years, all the court physicians and Li Tai himself had attempted to find a way to treat the sage emperor's injuries, but none of them had succeeded. But this was the first time Wang Chong had heard the truth behind the backlash. So that's how it was. I see. Wang Chong muttered, his mind in turmoil. Wang Chong's mind immediately went to the world constraint. If the stone of destiny could resist the world constraint, then if the sage emperor had also... Wang Chong quickly shook his head and rejected the idea. The sage emperor was Destiny Experimental Body 9. He also had a stone of destiny, and if this problem could have been solved that way, it would have already been solved. Moreover, while the world constraint was severe, it would only happen once every long interval. However, from what Master Guangxing had said, the sage emperor had been fighting the world at every moment. These were two completely different concepts. Understood. Thank you, Senior. Wang Chong sincerely said. There is one last thing. Master Guangxing's face turned solemn, and his sleeve shook as he extended a finger. As Wang Chong watched, countless points of light gathered on the tip of Master Guangxing's finger, transforming into a dragon-shaped character, the size of an infant's fist. Besides the image of a dragon, there was also that of a mountain. Before Wang Chong could understand what was going on, Master Guangxing thrust his palm forward, sending that image into Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong's body shivered, his mind in shock. Senior, this is... Master Guangxing slowly drew back his finger and sternly said, This is my last gift to you, and it is also heaven's greatest mistake. He was clearly somewhat tired from this effort. It was apparent that creating this image had taken far more effort than it seemed. When heaven intercepted me and sealed my soul into the earth, his intention had been to punish me, for me to suffer eternal pain and torment. But there are some things that not even heaven can predict. When he sealed me at the start, all I experienced was unimaginable pain and torment, and it was nothing but darkness beneath the earth. It seemed that I would not be able to see the sun for the rest of time. But not even the plans of heaven are perfect. After an earthquake, all of the surrounding earth veins shifted in my direction. Besides that, after suffering more than 300 years of pain and torment, my soul began to fuse with the earthly energy of the entire mountain range, something which heaven could have never predicted. From a certain perspective, I am that mountain and that mountain is me. To put it another way, I became a mountain god. The spiritual energy of the earth veins does not possess a consciousness. Such a situation had never before happened. Master Guangxing paused a moment. Gradually, I began to realize that I could use my consciousness to draw in the surrounding spiritual energy, and with my soul sealed, I didn't have anything else to do. Buzz! Wang Chong trembled as Master Guangxing continued to speak. 1 day, 2 days, 1 year, 2 years, 100 years, 200 years. I spent all those days absorbing the spiritual energy of the earth. Initially, it was because I had nothing else to do, but later, the entire matter started going beyond the scope of what I could control, beyond the scope of what I had first imagined. I became the dragon veins of the entire Central Plains. When Master Guangxing solemnly spoke those last words, a thunderclap went off in Wang Chong's mind. Wang Chong stared at Master Guangxing in speechless shock. He had long ago realized that Master Guangxing's state was rather special. Even when Wang Chong was more than 1,000 li away from the capital, Master Guangxing had still been able to sense him. Wang Chong had found it unusual at the time and used psychic energy to scan the area, but he had found no hint of Master Guangxing's existence. He knew that there had to be something special about Master Guangxing's state, but he had not imagined that Master Guangxing would actually have become the dragon vein of the Central Plains. A dragon vein with a consciousness. Wang Chong was so stunned that he couldn't speak. Based on what Master Guangxing had said, so long as he wanted, he could control all of the dragon veins of the Central Plains. Even I was shocked when I realized what had happened. Master Guangxing calmly said, unsurprised by Wang Chong's reaction. As for heaven, though he was somewhat slow, he eventually realized what was going on. However, when heaven realized to his shock what had happened and moved to deal with me, it was too late. My consciousness could appear at any place I pleased. I was able to instantly appear wherever the dragon Qi was, surpassing all other kinds of arts. It was too late for heaven to do anything by then. He had personally placed me into this state, single-handedly impeding himself. But heaven still managed to do a few things. He set up various seals around the central plains so that my power could not extend to the rest of the continent. But even this was just pouring a cup of water over a burning cart. A rare smile appeared on Master Guangxing's face. Even after so many years, the thought of heaven's infuriated appearance still made him happy. But some things appear better than they really are. While I can control the dragon Qi of the central plains, this has also become a mental burden on me. The number of times I can be awake every year is extremely limited. This is why I had no other choice than to find you during this special moment and bid you farewell. The mark I gave you was my certificate. So long as you have this mark of my acknowledgement, even if I am hibernating, you can still mobilize all my strength. This is the last thing I can help you with. Wang Chong was moved by these words. It was clear that Master Guangxing was trying to do all he could to help him. Whether it was in the Celestial Palace incident or in the future war, Master Guangxing could not and would not be able to participate. But through this method, he would be able to assist in his own way. Many thanks, Senior. Senior, be at ease. I will fight with all my strength. Wang Chong sincerely said. Go then. Not even I know what the future will be. It all depends on you, Master Guangxing said, a hint of fatigue on his face as his body began to fade away. Wang Chong did not delay. He knew that Master Guangxing had expended too much mental energy and was about to enter hibernation. After exchanging a few last words with him, he rose and left. Everything went about as Wang Chong predicted. Around one day later, Wang Chong stopped being able to sense Master Guangxing's aura from the Western Mausoleum. It was clear that he had truly fallen asleep. Upon realizing this, Wang Chong felt his heart sink. Everyone had placed their hopes on him, was trusting him without reservation. The origin immortal lord, the sage emperor Master Guangxing, everyone was like this, and the pressure on Wang Chong's shoulders was unprecedented. Still, Wang Chong's heart remained abnormally tough and resolved, not swayed in the slightest. Heaven, no matter where you are, I will find you and defeat you. Standing in front of the Western Mausoleum, Wang Chong looked over the capital. Several months went by in the blink of an eye. The world was thriving and at peace, and this empire which had united the world was showing signs of unprecedented prosperity. Even so, Wang Chong did not let his guard down. Every day, Wang Chong sent out numerous spies to sweep through the earth to seek out traces of heaven. But heaven really had disappeared and had yet to appear again. It was like he had never existed. Another month quickly went by. Bang! As usual, Wang Chong pushed open the door into his study with a stack of files, ready to study them. But at this moment, Wang Chong raised an eyebrow. There was someone in the study that did not belong to the Wang family. Although this person had done their utmost to conceal their aura, they could not hide from Wang Chong's senses. Before Wang Chong could speak, a familiar and slightly scratchy voice rang out in Wang Chong's ears. Supreme King, we meet again. High Priest. That familiar cloaked figure by the wall made Wang Chong's eyes fly open. How could it be you? This was truly too surprising. After the Celestial Palace incident, the Arab High Priest had vanished out of existence, leaving behind no trace. Moreover, Wang Chong recalled the Arab High Priest saying that their previous meeting would be their final one. Though he was surprised, Wang Chong quickly came forward to welcome him. Wonderful. Please sit, Wang Chong warmly said. Though the two of them didn't know each other very well, the Arab High Priest had helped Wang Chong a great deal. Moreover, this was the first member of the Celestial God Organization Wang Chong had seen since the Celestial Palace incident. There was probably no one besides him who knew where the Celestial God Organization had gone. The Arab High Priest slightly hesitated, but he quickly came forward. removing his black hood. The Arab high priest was slightly paler than before, his complexion poor. It appeared that he had not had a very good time over the last few months. Seeing that Wang Chong was about to call someone to serve tea and snacks, the Arab high priest quickly stopped him. "There is no need for courtesy. I will only be here for a little while and then quickly leave." After exchanging a few pleasantries, Wang Chong broached the main topic. "Senior, where have you been over the last few months?" Although the world had appeared calm and peaceful over the last few months, Wang Chong knew that this could not have been the case for the high priest. The destruction of the celestial palace and heaven's defeat was a world-sundering blow to the celestial god organization. The organization has been in disarray over the last few months, the Arab high priest sternly said. The celestial god organization has met with many setbacks in its long history, but this is the first time it can be called a defeat. I knew that you were looking for heaven and that you had dispatched many subordinates to seek out the celestial god organization. This is why I have come. There is no need for you to keep looking. Starting from now, no one from the celestial god organization will appear for a very long time. Not only that, do you remember the celestial army I told you about? All of the celestial army has vanished. Heaven has taken all of them away. Buzz. The high priest's words instantly made Wang Chong frown. He naturally remembered the celestial army. This was heaven's secret army of enormous size. The high priest had previously said that heaven was planning to mobilize this powerful army. Where did they go? Wang Chong asked after a few moments of silence. Wang Chong stared at the high priest with unprecedented focus. Heaven and his celestial army were a disaster in waiting. If possible, he wanted to find them and deal with the problem once and for all. I don't know, and I have no means of telling you. Heaven and Essence Supreme clearly noticed something off after the mission to deal with Luo Supreme. No one except the Supremes and a few high-ranking leaders of the Celestial God Organization knew about the Luo Supreme matter. Your appearance was too coincidental. No, to be more accurate, you shouldn't have appeared at all. Heaven and Essence Supreme were both suspicious, and they are the main reason the last few months was quite the ordeal for me. The high priest bitterly laughed. It was no mere ordeal. In truth, Essence Supreme and the others had already begun to suspect. That he had been able to escape alive was already impressive. Despite this, the high priest felt no resentment. It was by his own will that he had revealed to Wang Chong that secret. But I have not come here to tell you that the danger has passed and you can let down your guard. On the contrary, starting from now, you must be extremely cautious and careful. The high priest's expression turned solemn. I understand heaven too much. He is excessively proud and is not someone who can just swallow his anger. The more he yields, the more he bides his time, the greater and more terrifying his vengeance will be. By taking everyone away with him, heaven is not retreating, but preparing for a new offensive. From what I know, when Essence Supreme mobilized numerous sea beasts to take everyone away, he also took from the continent numerous embryos to which the behemoth fusion art had been applied. Moreover, Essence Supreme has also been gathering materials to craft a new physical body. In addition, while your defeat of heaven and destruction of his personal ritual tool is truly shocking, and it dealt significant damage to heaven's original body that will prevent him from appearing for a long time, such injuries are far from enough to take heaven's life. With heaven's capabilities, so long as he is not killed, he will only need 6 years at most to fully recover, completely neutralizing the effects of that blow. And if he's fast, he might need only 3 or 4 years, the high priest sternly said. Wang Chong's heart instantly sank. While 3 to 4 years might be rather long to an ordinary human, for the long-lived heaven it was barely anything, a brief flash. Wang Chong had known that destroying the celestial palace wasn't enough to kill heaven, but he had not imagined that his soul would be able to heal so quickly. This isn't even my greatest worry. The high priest shook his head, deep concern appearing in his eyes. Heaven does not tell us everything, and on some matters even the Supremes know only a few snatches, but I do know one thing. Heaven was sealed numerous epochs ago. We gathered various materials, even seeking them from the deep ocean and the depths of the earth, in the hopes that we could find some precious material that would assist heaven in breaking out of the seal, but all of our efforts failed. Later on, someone finally asked when heaven would break out of the seal, or if there was perhaps another way. Normally, heaven would not answer, and these questions are normally taboo. But this time, heaven's avatar replied. Heaven said that the seal on him was incredibly powerful, almost unbreakable. Even the end of days and the collapse of the world would find it hard to destroy that seal. In other words, breaking the seal is essentially impossible. But heaven said something rather strange as well. He said that after around 1300 years, there would be a special event that would loosen his seal, providing him the best chance to break free. The high priest sternly said. What? Wang Chong's pupils constricted, his face paling. This answer left everyone surprised. At the time, I asked why was it 1300 years rather than now? What sort of special event would occur? Heaven was in a good mood, so he said a little more. He said that at set intervals, calamity would descend on the world. A civilization might be destroyed or a continent might crumble, but that disaster that would come 1300 years later would be different. That would be an unprecedented destruction of the world's foundation, the high priest sternly said. Wang Chong's heart trembled as a vague idea took form in his mind. Heaven didn't go into more details, and up until now, none of us have dared to ask any more questions. At that time, Luo Supreme had yet to betray the Celestial God Organization. I was the one who had asked the question, so I remember the events very clearly. At the time, heaven said that it would be 1300 years from then, and given the time that has passed, that time is now. The high priest turned and gave Wang Chong a profound glance, his meaning obvious. Wang Chong's mind reeled, having long ago been rendered speechless. 1300 years. His mind in turmoil, countless thoughts occurred to him, and his expression slowly turned grave. He had never imagined that this would be the news the high priest would bring. If he was right, then it meant that the next time he faced heaven, it would be in his original body, not an avatar. Wang Chong, though heaven only brought up that point casually, with no one knowing why he believed that this incident would take place in 1300 years and was seemingly very sure of it. All of us sensed that heaven was not speaking nonsense. Moreover, upon second thought, the fact that Essence Supreme's group began to suddenly gather doomsday insignias might be linked to this matter. This is all I can tell you. You will have to rely on yourself for the rest. Heaven will come back, and if heaven's original body breaks from his seal, all of us will be doomed. He will build another celestial palace and make everyone his slaves, the high priest sternly said. Many thanks, Senior. I understand, Wang Chong sternly said. The news the high priest had brought was extremely important to him. At the very least, with this warning, he would have enough time to prepare, even if heaven did manage to break out of his seal. The high priest did not stay for very long. After exchanging a few more words with Wang Chong on matters concerning the Celestial God Organization, he silently departed. Just like when he had come, no one in the Wang family residence was aware that he had departed. After a few moments of thought, Wang Chong said, Pass on my order. Summon Old Eagle Xianxia, Young Master Qingyang, Li Sai, and Xue Qianjun. In addition, notify King Song, Zhangqiu Jianxiong, Crown Prince's Junior Guardian Wang Zhongxi, Tong Luo Great General Abusi. I have a matter to discuss with them. Yes. Outside the study, a figure swiftly departed. As time passed, all was calm in the capital, but there were ripples beneath the surface. In his new status as the Supreme King, Wang Chong had summoned all his subordinates to his estate, together with all the top commanders of the Tang Empire and the various sovereigns of the surrounding countries. They held a conference that lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, no one leaving Wang Chong's estate for the duration. No one except the participants knew what was being discussed, and when the conference ended, waves began to spread through the Tang Empire. From the shore of the Eastern Sea all the way to the Tsong Mountains, even past them to the western border of the Arabian Empire, all of the continent's soldiers were marshaled, but this time it was not to prepare for war. Another several months went by, and the continent remained calm and peaceful. The Celestial God Organization really had seemingly withdrawn from the continent. But far away, in a distant space that few knew of, rumble. Lightning crackled down from the clouds, a destructive deluge that blasted toward the center of this dimension, where there was a figure who radiated a powerful and chaotic storm of energy. Each time a thick lightning bolt cracked down, that human figure in the center trembled, seemingly in immense pain. Around that man was a spiderweb of thick chains that loudly clanged as the man trembled. Despite the immense pain, the man in the center of this dimension remained tight-lipped, only occasionally exclaiming slightly. After a long while, in this realm of endless lightning, heaven's aura finally began to calm down. Wang Chong, whether you are the child of destruction or child of prophecy, one day, we will return this pain 100-fold. In the seal, heaven looked up at the sky and furiously roared, his voice brimming with killing intent and hatred. In the celestial palace incident, heaven had suffered an unimaginable wound, his soul almost breaking apart. The backlash from the destruction of a personal ritual tool was something that no outsider could understand. Ever since that day, heaven had been forced to use this method, each day subjecting himself to the pain of 10,000 lightning bolts. Even so, despite the massive pain he endured, his soul was recovering much more slowly than expected. The progress made each day was triflingly insignificant. This only made the killing intent in heaven's heart intensify. After a long while, heaven finally managed to calm himself down. "Great One?" A voice rang out, breaking the silence. The place that heaven had been sealed had always been a secret. Whether it was Wang Chong or Supremes like Luo Supreme, they had all tried to find it, but no one had ever been able to succeed. Logically speaking, no one except heaven could be here. "How is it?" Heaven suddenly said. As he spoke, a fingernail-sized point of light appeared in the middle of the dimension. Closer inspection would reveal it to be a mental fragment that appeared to have been torn off from a soul. The energy signature of this mental fragment was identical to Essence Supreme's, the soul-detaining art. This was one of heaven's unique arts. He could take a part of a person's soul, allowing him to control that person's life. At the same time, for the sealed heaven, it served as an extremely effective method of communication. This method was only implemented after the schism in the Celestial God Organization. In addition, though this was the place where he was sealed, the area was entirely under heaven's control. Even Essence Supreme could only communicate with heaven, and he still had no idea where heaven's exact location was. "Great One, everything has been taken care of. The last batch of sea beasts has moved out from the continent. In addition, I have already begun the behemoth creation experiments. It won't be long before an army of true behemoths can be formed," Essence Supreme respectfully said. No one had ever been able to defeat the Celestial God Organization, not even that child of destruction. Though they had lost this time, they had yet to give up. All they were waiting for was a chance at revenge. "Great One, what should we do now?" Essence Supreme respectfully said. This ordinary question made the dimension become eerily still. Heaven was silent, unable to speak for some time. Not even he knew what should be done next. This seal was a giant cage that kept him firmly locked within this place. Wang Chong had destroyed his avatar, destroyed the Pantheon Pearl, and destroyed the Celestial Palace, but heaven could do nothing in response. He couldn't even create another avatar. Given Wang Chong's current level of strength, Essence Supreme's group was no match for him. Moreover, on the trip to the steppe, Essence Supreme had been badly wounded. "Great One," Essence Supreme did not have as many concerns on his mind as he once more sought an answer. "That child of destruction, how should we handle him?" Heaven frowned, continuing to say nothing. "Awoo!" As Heaven was pondering his answer, a painful howl that seemed like a mixture of both human and beast resounded through the dimension. That sudden howl abruptly ended the current topic of conversation. "Great One, is that the child of the world? Is he still like this?" Essence Supreme asked. Heaven's dimension had a powerful sealing energy over it, and Essence Supreme could not sense anything too far away from his mental fragment. However, Essence Supreme had still managed to sense a little of An Lushan's aura. In the War of the Northeast, An Lushan had been defeated, bringing down Genesis Supreme with him. Normally, An Lushan's soul would have been given to Essence Supreme to handle, but heaven had made an exception and taken the soul with him. Though this was strange, Essence Supreme had never questioned heaven's decisions too much. Heaven nodded. He has been in this state ever since he was brought back. After so long, we have gotten used to it. However, after saying this, heaven also turned his head and rebuked, "Shut your mouth." On the other side, it seemed like Lushan's soul didn't hear, continuing to miserably howl. Heaven couldn't help but frown at this sight. Ever since heaven had rescued Lushan, his soul had been in a very bizarre state, disordered and lost, as if he had completely lost his mind. Initially, he had attempted to fix Lushan, but nothing he had done had worked. "Wang Chong, I'll kill you, and Lushan roared, his hatred reaching to the heavens, his entire being frenzied and crazed. He appeared to be immersed in his own world. It seems that his mind has completely collapsed. In his current state, he's no better than a cripple," Essence Supreme said after a few moments of silence. And Lushan had almost been about to obtain everything, and even Heaven and Essence Supreme had thought about making him the world emperor once the operation was over. Alas, at the final moment, when the light of victory was already visible, it had all been destroyed by the explosives Wang Chong had buried within the steel fortress. More importantly, besides this, Essence Supreme also knew that Wang Chong and Lushan had a very strong personal grudge between them. When a person's pillars of support and convictions crumbled, they would end up like Lushan. Essence Supreme was saying that Lushan could already be abandoned, but Heaven insisted on keeping him. "You are wrong." Heaven shook his head, seeming to know what Essence Supreme was thinking. A person who can receive the acknowledgement of the world consciousness cannot be that simple. Moreover, I cannot understand why, after countless epics and countless talented individuals, the world consciousness would choose him to be the child of the world. There must be something special about him. And Lushan had always believed that Child of the World was a title that the Celestial God Organization had granted him, even believed that the phenomena on his body were their doing. Only Heaven knew that he had actually done nothing. All of those things had been through Lushan's own power. There is also something else that you're wrong about. He truly has lost control and fallen into disarray. But he has not gone crazy. Different from what you imagined. His mind and convictions have not crumbled. Heaven paused before adding, "Ever since I brought him here, his state has been rather strange. It is like the energy of another world has been seeping into his mind." Another world? Essence Supreme was shocked by this, even that fingernail-sized mental fragment fiercely trembling. Heaven had never mentioned this before. The otherworldly invaders? Essence Supreme asked. When it came to other worlds, his mind immediately went to the world of the otherworldly invaders. No! To his surprise, Heaven shook his head and directly rejected the idea. At the start, I also suspected that it was connected to that world, but I quickly realized that this was not the case. The attributes of that energy are the most similar to our world. Essence Supreme was taken aback, not understanding Heaven's meaning. If the energy was similar to this world, then it probably was from this world. Why had Heaven called it another world? Heaven saw this and chuckled, apparently knowing the question on Essence Supreme's mind. There are some things that we are unable to explain to you in detail. We have inspected his memories, and in the end, we found strange memory fragments that appeared to be very similar to our world, but also completely different. Many of these memory fragments had him in them, but the events within had never happened, and there were also events that seemed to be from the future. At first, we believed that this was an error in his memories. However, later on, we discovered that these were not his memories, but had simply appeared in his mind. It appears to be a world similar to ours, but events there developed in an entirely different fashion. There are too few fragments, so we cannot find out too much, nor can we understand what sort of state he is in. Heaven tightly furrowed his brow. Few things could pose a difficulty to Heaven, but he truly did not know what was going on within Lushan's strange state. Boom! As Heaven was speaking, suddenly, without any warning, the sealed dimension trembled as if an invisible hand was shaking it about. Even Heaven was alarmed by this development. No one understood the sealed dimension more than him. In normal circumstances, even the world's collapse would barely affect it. Great One, sensing what was happening, Essence Supreme began to panic a little. This is a powerful force, but heaven appeared to not hear him. He was much stronger than Essence Supreme, and he could sense that a powerful energy was rapidly approaching. No, it was not right to call it energy. It appeared more like a clash of continent on continent, a collision of world upon world. Cackalack, the dimension trembled once more, and with a frightening crack, a black fissure was torn through the dimension. After this, a lightning bolt that was 10,000 times more dazzling than the sun shot out of the fissure and struck in Lushan's soul. Aha! And Lushan's soul instantly howled in immense pain, a howl louder than any previous howl. A sliver of shock appeared in Heaven's eyes. While there was a lot of sound and fury, he could sense that the seal had not actually been loosened, and nothing had actually changed. All of this was happening due to Lushan. His surroundings fell quiet, time itself having seemingly stopped. All this had come quickly and ended quickly. The shuddering disappeared with such speed that it seemed like an illusion. But both Heaven and Essence Supreme understood that things were not that simple. They immediately turned their attention to Lushan in the corner. Only a little ball was left of Lushan's soul, and it was surrounded by a gray fog the size of a millstone. But at this moment, a light erupted from the gray fog. At this moment, even Essence Supreme was able to sense that energy that did not belong to this world. A howl of anger broke the silence, piercing through the firmament like a sharp arrow. I see. I understand. I finally understand. Wang Chong. So this was the reason you wanted to kill me. I won't let you go. Never. I could kill you once, so I can kill you twice. Heaven and Essence Supreme could sense that the lost and disordered Lushan was suddenly sobering up like he was waking up from a dream. But what shocked them the most was Lushan's words. He understood? Understood what? And when had he ever killed Wang Chong? While his mind was clearing, why did his state seem to be even more confusing? But their questions did not last for long. Let us see what secrets you have. Heaven reached out with a hand. At this moment, Lushan didn't even have a chance to resist and was immediately drawn into Heaven's hand. Bang! There was no room for negotiation. Heaven's mind surged into Lushan's soul like a storm. Heaven's overwhelming strength didn't give Lushan time to even muster a defense. And a moment later, everything was exposed. Amidst crackling electricity, everything in Lushan's mind, including countless fragmentary images that had appeared after that strange development, rushed into Heaven's mind. Silence. Absolute silence. Heaven's body crackled with electricity, but he said nothing. After an hour in this suffocating atmosphere, buzz. Heaven's eyelids trembled and flew open. At that moment, his eyes were dazzlingly bright like the sun and moon, a light that one did not dare to look at directly. So that's how it was. I see. To think that there was something in the world like this, that someone can have a second try after dying. It turns out that we already succeeded in another world. Heaven's body rapidly pulsed with energy akin to blazing flames. His intuition was right. After a long wait, he had finally received a result. In Lushan's mind, he had seen images that he could not possibly imagine, had witnessed the unbelievable truth. The sealed dimension trembled as even Heaven was shaken by this unprecedented phenomenon. Heaven finally understood that everything was far more complicated than it seemed. What had emerged from that black fissure was not a brilliant lightning bolt, but another soul. Another Lushan. The two Lushans were identical, and they both appeared in his senses, the two of them merging together. By reading the memories of that other Lushan, Heaven had found out everything. The otherworldly invader army, the shattering of the world, Wang Chong transforming into a beam of light. If these images were not right before his eyes, Heaven would have found it very hard to believe that this was possible. He now understood why, over the many eons, it was Lushan who had been chosen as the child of the world. Wang Chong and Lushan. This was a destined pair, the two of them foreordained to be foes. And these two were also the two greatest linking points between the two worlds. This child of destruction is different from the rest, different from all the other destiny experimental bodies, because he did not simply come from another world. Child of prophecy? Ha ha ha. As Heaven read through that other and Lushan's memories, he heartily laughed. As a thought occurred to him, his mind became much clearer. Dao Yi. Didn't you say that the person who appeared after many eons to destroy our celestial palace would be our greatest foe? Then now, we will merge with his greatest destined foe. Let us see if your prophecy is right or if our fate is tougher. The fabric of space trembled as Heaven's eyes erupted with a brilliant light, lighting up the sealed dimension. Heaven lowered his head and said to the two Lushians, "And Lushan, didn't you want to kill Wang Chong? We will lend you a hand." Boom! Before Lushan could answer, an enormous energy howled out of Heaven's body and into Lushan's soul. But surprisingly, Heaven's devouring encountered no struggle or resistance. As Heaven was in the midst of devouring, a voice that was somewhat similar to Lushan's but slightly scratchy and brimming with endless hatred cried out, "Come on, then, I only have one condition. No matter what, he must die." As this voice spoke, the two Lushians threw themselves into Heaven's soul. If there was one person in the world that could help him kill Wang Chong, then it was undoubtedly Heaven. Boom! The fusion process was much faster than expected. A few moments later, a light tens of thousands of times brighter than the sun erupted from Heaven's body, and a beam of light shot upward, sending ripples throughout the sealed dimension. The enormous energy even shook Essence Supreme's soul fragment out of Heaven's body. Besides that, Essence Supreme could sense that Heaven's energy was rapidly rising after absorbing Lushan's soul. His soul had been heavily damaged from the backlash that came from the destruction of the Celestial Palace, covered in cracks. But at this moment, his soul's condition began to rapidly improve. It recovered by more than 20%, and while it was still not fully healed, its recovery speed was many times faster. Moreover, on Heaven's body, he could sense a special energy that had previously only appeared on Lushan. The world consciousness. Essence Supreme immediately understood that by completely devouring Lushan, Heaven had inherited that power that Lushan had as the child of the world. At this moment, Heaven was the new child of the world. As a spatial storm ripped through the region, Essence Supreme came to an understanding that what had happened just now had not been an accident. Heaven had voluntarily removed Essence Supreme's soul shard. He no longer needs me. No one will dare to betray him now. Essence Supreme didn't know what Heaven had gained from Lushan's soul or what he had seen, but there was no doubt that Heaven was brimming with confidence. After a long while, the storm finally calmed down. Crack! Essence Supreme could sense that on the very edge of the dimension, there was a sharp crack, and then a tear appeared on that seemingly impregnable domain, a sliver of external energy flowing inside. How could this be? Essence Supreme was flabbergasted. But before he had time to think, Heaven began to slowly open his eyes. "Your Majesty!" Essence Supreme hastily lowered his head, his tone one of unprecedented meekness. Essence Supreme suddenly understood that the moment they had been awaiting for so long had perhaps truly come. All was quiet, and when Heaven finally spoke, the fabric of space trembled. "Essence Supreme, the moment we have been awaiting for countless epochs has finally arrived." Heaven's simple words left Essence Supreme's mind reeling. "But there is one other matter. Do you recall that girl we had you bring back?" Heaven said. Essence Supreme bowed and said, "Yes, your subordinate has already taken care of her." "Very good. There is a task for you to carry out." Several days later, in the capital of the Great Tang, a gust of wind caused countless leaves to dance and sprinkle across the ground. In his study, Wang Chong was reading through reports when a guard came in with a letter. "Your Highness, someone outside has come to deliver a letter." "Understood. Bring it here." Wang Chong casually pointed at his desk. "Yes." The guard quickly departed. After a few moments, once he was done reading the report in his hand, Wang Chong finally took the letter. Upon glancing at its contents, he instantly paled. There were no words on the letter, only a wooden hairpin and a white sheet of paper. Wang Chong had gifted this hairpin to Su Qichin a long time ago, and on the white sheet of paper was an image of the celestial palace. Heaven! Wang Chong's eyes chilled as he realized what was happening. As Wang Chong spoke, the letter suddenly flew into the air, and a familiar voice began to majestically ring out. Wang Chong, we already know all your secrets. The grudges between us will not end like this. 3 years from now, we will lead all of the celestial army and destroy this world. At that time, you will not have the slightest chance. Cherish your last moments. Heaven's voice was cold, and as he spoke, a black flame instantly erupted from the letter and burned it into ash. As the ash drifted down, Heaven's aura vanished. Heaven had only attached a part of his consciousness to the letter, not sent his original body. Wang Chong sat motionless on his chair, his eyes growing colder and colder. Knew all his secrets? What did that mean? And what did 3 years signify? Did it mean that Heaven was going to break out of his seal in 3 years? Countless ideas ran through Wang Chong's mind. After the Celestial Palace incident, Heaven and the Celestial God Organization had vanished like a puff of smoke. This was the first letter he had ever received from Heaven. Is this a declaration of war? Wang Chong slowly rose from his chair, a vast energy beginning to slowly erupt from his body. No matter what scheme you have, I will receive it with all I have. This time, I will not give you the chance to bring disaster on this world. He spoke these final words with absolute resolve. Only a few people were informed about Heaven's letter, so the capital remained calm. But in secret, everything began to change. Under Wang Chong's guidance, after discussion with Yun Geiseman, Osmish Kagan, and the other sovereigns, and with the support of Crown Prince's junior guardian Wang Zhongxi, Zhangqiu Jianxiong, and Tongluo Great General Abusi, Li Hong began an unprecedented military expansion across the entire continent. From the Central Plains in the east all the way to the Arabian Empire in the west, all the armies, regardless of people or country, began to rapidly expand at an astonishing speed, with many training camps being established. This time, however, it was not for a war between countries, but to face a future threat of unprecedented enormity, one which threatened the lives of all of humanity. 3 years. This was the time given by Heaven's letter. At the same time, Wang Chong recalled that this was also when the otherworldly invaders would appear. Whether it was to deal with Heaven's immense celestial army or to deal with the otherworldly invaders, humanity required a powerful army of unprecedented size. From a certain perspective, it was rather fortunate that the entire continent had been embroiled in war for the last few decades. Even though all countries had suffered grievous losses, it also meant that they had been able to train up large numbers of experienced generals and determined soldiers who had been forged in fire and blood. This was an immense resource that Wang Chong had previously not had access to. Baram, Taichi Bil Eli, Zhangqiu Jianxiong, Zhang Shogui, Wunu Shibi, these renowned generals and iron-blood soldiers packed the training camps. There were tens of thousands of camps, each one training numerous soldiers. This massive empire that, for the first time, constituted the entire continent began to turn like a giant machine. Not long after all this was completed, Wang Chong announced that he was entering seclusion so that he could break through into an even higher realm. No one knew how long this seclusion would be, but everyone knew that Wang Chong was preparing for the final war, the decisive war between him and Heaven. 3 years flew by. Splash! As dawn approached, in a part of the ocean far away from the continent, waves splashed as a figure emerged from the bottom of the ocean. Upon closer inspection, this was a creature similar to a giant octopus, but it was also different, as there were many signs that it had been artificially modified. This was clearly a sea creature created through the behemoth fusion art. Is this the place? A whispered voice came from the head of the octopus. Yes, everyone, be careful to not alarm them. Several figures silently jumped off the head of the octopus creature and made their way onto the shore. A few seconds later, the group took off the shark skins they used to move around underwater and raised their heads. In front of them was a craggy cliff face. They had chosen to come ashore here so as to not alarm the people on this island. Swish! 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 Using both their hands and feet, they scaled the wall like monkeys. In the pre-dawn darkness, they went completely undiscovered. It took only a few seconds to reach the top of the cliff, from which they had a complete view of the place. But after glancing around, they paled and immediately rushed toward the center of the island, casting aside all pretense of stealth. The island was deserted. In front of them were abandoned tents, wooden sheds, and still smoldering campfires. There were even fish bones, bowls, and plates. One of the men in black looked around and solemnly said, "They left, probably not too long ago. We were too late." Another voice came from nearby. "Look over there." One of the men in black emerged from a small wooden shed. In his hand was a large, ancient bronze book, the front covered with exquisite carvings and a striking golden vertical eye. The Eye of God. The men trembled in shock upon seeing this golden eye with its vertical pupil, instantly recognizing it. The first to discover the Eye of God was the Supreme King, who had discovered it in some ruins deep beneath the Sassanid dynasty. "Ish!" The leader waved his hand, and that bronze book flew into his hand. He flipped through the pages, which contained various martial arts, including the Lu Wu mantra and the Mara mantra. This is the secret martial arts manual that they use for their daily training on this island. The information we got was correct. This place truly is an important base of the men in black, the leader solemnly said. Over the last 3 years, Heaven and the Celestial God organization had seemingly evaporated, vanishing without a trace. But the Great Tang and the rest of the continent had not given up on their pursuit, continuing to hunt them down until they finally found some clues. The Celestial God organization has already been gone for 3 years. Why would they leave behind such an important book on this island? One of them asked. This can only mean that there was something more important, the leader said. Inform His Highness that the Celestial God organization is beginning to awaken. They might be starting to move again. Whoosh! Following their leader's order, a messenger bird quickly took flight, making its way northward. It all depends on Team 2 now. On the ground, the leader watched the bird leave as a grave light flashed in his eyes. Whoosh! A breeze blew through an extremely remote city in the northwest of the Great Tang. A lean figure wearing gray clothes cautiously passed through the city gate. Behind him, a sign was hung from the rather old city gates, 2 words written upon it, "Abandoned City." The Great Tang did not have many abandoned cities, particularly after it had integrated the other countries. With the Great Tang as the center of the world, a large number of people had moved into the interior, making the place more prosperous and bustling than ever before. The people of the other countries living in harmony produced a unique and beautiful sight. The report said that there were still around 500 people in this abandoned city, mostly old people who lived a simple life of beginning work at sunrise and resting after sunset. Though there were not many people and the place was extremely remote, the Great Tang had not given up on this old and remote city. Not too long ago, the imperial court had appointed an excellent official as the county official to manage the area. According to custom, the official would have to write a report on the current situation after taking his seat. But 7 days had passed since the official had entered the city, and there had been no news. Later on, the imperial court had sent several emissaries to see what was going on. But they, too, had vanished. Not only that, a camel caravan passed through the area and discovered that the city was completely empty. Moreover, at dawn, the caravan was attacked by something, and the group fled in a panic. The news eventually reached the imperial court, which dispatched this mission. Quiet. The city was deathly still, and as that gray-robed figure cautiously advanced, the streets were empty, countless fallen leaves being blown about in the wind. No one, no one, no one. The gray-robed man went from house to house, but he discovered that all of them were empty. There were still plates and chopsticks arranged on the table, even sumptuous meals, but nothing had been touched. Moreover, the long passage of time meant that this food was already covered in a thick layer of mold. This sight made the gray-robed man furrow his brows. This abandoned city wasn't very prosperous, and its inhabitants were simple and frugal. No one would make food and then suddenly leave without a good reason. This was far too bizarre. Buzz. As he continued forward, he began to hear a buzzing sound. The man stopped, frowned, and began to move in the direction of the sound. In front of him was a massive building. Judging by its appearance, it was probably the local ancestral hall. After a moment of hesitation, the gray-robed man pushed open the door and entered. Ugh! The moment he saw what was inside, the man paled, his body trembling as he vomited. Corpses. A huge mass of corpses. The bodies of countless people had been piled high in the ancestral hall, a cruel and gruesome sight. The buzzing he had heard was the large number of flies attracted by all the rotting flesh. Among the corpses, he even spotted an official's hat. There was no doubt that all the missing people were here. No one could say what had happened here, but it was so frighteningly gruesome that the man seemed to be greatly stunned, staggering out of the hall and running as he continued to gag. Bang! As he charged out of the hall and onto the street, the earth shuddered. With a terrifying roar, the ground cracked open, and a massive black silhouette emerged. Roar! As it rose from the ground, a black tentacle swept toward the man. The gray-robed man turned his head and saw a giant maw covered with sharp teeth, and also two savage red eyes. A monster. The shape of this monster made no sense, and it appeared like a failed product. It appeared like a limp pile of flesh, claws randomly growing out of places that they shouldn't have. Even so, the monster possessed a frightening ability to kill. Bang! As the giant tentacle smashed down, the gray paving stones of the street were shattered apart, the debris spraying everywhere. The man instantly leaped away, barely dodging the tentacle's strike. Cree! At almost the same time, a dazzling firework shot up from the man's body, leaving a blazing trail of smoke and light that was clearly visible from even several hundred li away. The gray-robed man's eyes instantly turned cold and vicious. It's them. They had already found several areas across the north where someone had been gathering the embryos of various animals. But this was the first time they had received confirmation that the embryos were being used to create behemoths. Everyone knew that besides the Supreme King, only one group had the behemoth creation art, the Celestial God Organization. There was no doubt that the Celestial God Organization that had disappeared 3 years ago had reemerged. Clang! Facing down this monster, the gray-robed man pulled out a pair of sharp daggers and charged, moving as nimbly as a swallow. Several days later, in the distant capital, under an overcast sky, several hawks carrying special insignias flew into a government office close to the imperial palace. As the hawks landed, a guard came forward to receive them, smoothly removing their letters before jumping down from the roof and delivering the reports to a black-robed and slender figure who exuded power and majesty. Your Highness, reports from Teams 2 and 5. They've discovered traces of the Celestial God Organization. Together with the reports from the other teams, we have now discovered 7 areas connected to the Celestial God Organization, the guard respectfully said. I see. You're dismissed. Li Xuantu waved his hand, his face aloof. Yes. The guard flew away. As he turned, the special insignia on his waist was clearly exposed for a moment. On one side of the token was a spear piercing through a golden dragon, and on the other side, the words God Vanquisher had been written in ancient script. It had been 3 years since the Celestial Palace incident and the disappearance of the Celestial God Organization. Even so, Wang Chong and his allies had not given up the pursuit. The God Vanquisher Group was an organization that Wang Chong and his allies had established to deal with the Celestial God Organization, selected from the elites of the entire world. The Dragon Guard, the Shadow Dragons, the Imperial Servitors, Wang Chong's own elites, and martial experts from various countries were all gathered into this organization. Wang Chong's own wind, forest, fire, and mountain teams, and the intelligence network of the Imperial household, had also been merged into the organization. The God Vanquisher Group was not under the 6 bureaus, and its authority far exceeded any of them. The leader of this force was none other than the former Crown Prince, Li Xuantu. Li Xuantu had a special status. Not only was he a member of the Imperial household, he was a close ally of Wang Chong. In the Celestial Palace incident, he had done everything in his power to buy time for Wang Chong to defeat Heaven, so he was the best choice to lead this force. A soft sigh came from behind him, Li Jingzhong, wearing robes of black silk, suddenly spoke. Your Highness, on an island in the ocean to the south, we found that the celestial god organization had already withdrawn. And to the north we found traces of behemoths. This is bad news for us. It seems like the 3 years of peace are about to end. Li Xuantu was the leader of the God Vanquisher group, and its deputy leader was none other than the chief eunuch of the inner court, Li Jingzhong. It was always a false peace. If heaven's not dead, there's no such thing as peace. Didn't we already know this 3 years ago? Li Xuantu placed his hands behind his back, his face calm and relaxed. The celestial god organization would appear one day. As someone who had taken part in those events, he was keenly aware of this. But this is an extremely important matter. Don't we need to inform the Supreme King? Li Jingzhong cautiously asked. While they were the head and deputy head of the God Vanquisher group, everyone knew that the true leader could only be the Supreme King Wang Chong. And only Wang Chong could deal with heaven. Li Xuantu slightly frowned as he pondered the question, but he quickly waved his hand and firmly said, There's no need. This is only the beginning. Until the final moment, until I have given the order, no one is to disturb the Supreme King. Unless heaven appears, you should know what the consequences will be for disturbing the Supreme King. 3 years ago, Wang Chong had announced that he was entering seclusion to seek an even higher realm, after which he had vanished, stepping back from the political stage. With Wang Chong gone, Li Xuantu, Zhangzhou Jianxiong, Wang Zhongxi, Osmishkagan, Baram, and all the others had taken the various roles Wang Chong had played and continued to ensure that the continent ran smoothly. All of them had reached a tacit agreement that until that final day arrived, no one was to disturb Wang Chong. This was because the fate of all countries, all of civilization, rested on him. If Wang Chong failed, humanity would come to an end. Yes, this lowly one understands. Li Jingzhong's heart thumped as he quickly lowered his head. Li Xuantu glanced at him and asked, How are the preparations in the other groups going? The various great clans of Lingnan are basically done. In addition, the training in the other groups is nearing completion. Li Jingzhong hastily said, his expression relaxing. Confirm it again. No mistake can be permitted, Li Xuantu sternly said. Yes. A few moments later, several messenger birds flew out in all directions.